Hello, grade 9 students, and welcome to a new PowerPoint lecture. Today we're going to talk about narrative essays. Of course, you've taken this lesson before in the previous years. We're going to take it again this year, of course. What is narrative writing? Okay, first of all, the word narrative basically means storytelling. So when you are writing a narrative essay, you are writing a story. So what are the characteristics of this type of essay or this type of writing? It is divided, like any essay in this world, it is divided into three main parts: the introduction, the body, and finally the conclusion. Now, in a narrative essay, what goes in the introduction? Like any essay also, it needs a hook. A hook is an attention grabber. A first sentence or first two sentences that would catch your reader's attention. It could be, as we said before, a sound effect, describing a scene, a question, something, just basically something that would catch your reader's attention and want them to read on with your story. There needs to be a setting in the introduction. What is a setting? A setting is not only a place. A setting is time and place of the story. For example, like the model I'm going to give you today, the setting was the dorm room in a college and the time was after midnight. Characters, the main characters only. Who were the main characters in the story? Who was involved? And of course, if someone is telling the story, you would say narrator. You wouldn't say I, unless you are the narrator in that story. Unless you are writing the story, you would say me. Okay? And finally, your thesis would come in the form of the main idea of the story. Okay? It is still the last sentence of your introduction. Here you write what your story is going to be about. The body. Now, the body is a plot. The plot, as you took also from previous years, is the sequence of events, the events that happened in chronological or time order. What happened at the beginning? So there's obviously a beginning, a middle, and an end. And we need to write them in chronological, or if you want, time order. The word chronological, when you see a prefix chrono or chron in any word, it means related to time. For example, the scientific word for a watch is a chronometer. So, writing a story in chronological order, it should be written in chronological order, means you should write it in sequence of time. First, later on, after that, the next month, the next week. Okay, you need also, when you write a story in chronological order, you need to use those signals, transitional signals that are related to time. And finally, the conclusion. You need to include feelings, final thoughts, generally a moral lesson that you learned from this story. This is a very important part of your conclusion. So let's move on to what we call a story elements chart. Whenever you write a narrative essay, you need to fill this out. Most of the time, it's not an outline. You need to fill out a story elements chart. This type of chart, as you see, is used to organize your ideas in order to use them when you write your essay. Okay, the following is a sample story elements chart. And of course, when you write here, you write in phrases. Title, of course, the complete title here. Main characters, for example, narrator, roommate, or narrator, friend, depending on the main characters in your story. Now the problem here, you write it in a full sentence. Okay, the narrator was planning to study for his final or her final exam the next day when a disaster happened. Full stop. This is the main idea of the story. The main events, you can divide them into 3 points or maximum of 4 points. You don't need more than that. And here you need to write in phrases. For example, a narrator decided to study in the attic. He took all his books with him but forgot one book and later had to go and get it. He saw a scary scene, okay, etc. Just quick phrases, don't write full sentences. And then the ending or the resolution. What happened at the end? Write that in a phrase. Lesson learned. Also, what kind of a lesson did the narrator learn, or what kind of a lesson did we learn from that story? The main points here, we only write phrases in this chart and not complete sentences. After filling the chart, you will find that your job of writing an essay is so much easier. Your ideas are now organized, and all you have to do is turn the phrases into complete sentences and add your details. This is a sample narrative writing model. The theme is mysteries and supernatural events. This is what the comprehension lesson we're taking. Let's begin. Aren't you glad you didn't turn on the light? This is the title. I reserved the room in the basement of my dorm as soon as I realized I would have to pull an all-nighter in order to prepare for tomorrow's final exam. My roommate, Judy, liked to get to bed early, so I packed up everything I thought I would need and went downstairs to study and study and study some more. So we have a setting, the dorm room. The narrator wants to pull an all-nighter to study for the exam, so it means that she's going to have to study all night. We have a time for that, and we know that the problem is that she needs to study. It was 2 o'clock when I realized that I had left one of the textbooks upstairs on my bed. With a dramatic sigh, I rose and climbed the stairs slowly to my 3rd floor dorm room. The lights were dim. Dim means low in the long hallway, and the old boards creaked under my weary tread. So, 2 o'clock, she noticed that she had forgotten one of her textbooks and she needed to go back to her dorm room where her friend was sleeping. Something felt creepy, something felt weird. I reached my room and turned the handle as softly as I could, pushing the door open just enough to slip inside so that the hall lights would not wake up my roommate. The room was filled with a strange metallic smell. You know that metallic smell, when you smell blood, there is a certain smell of iron or metal. I frowned a bit, my arms breaking out into chills. There was a strange feeling of malice. Malice means something very bad in the room, as if a malevolent, also something evil, gaze were fixed upon me. She felt that an evil eye was fixed upon her. It was a mind trick. The all-nighter was catching up with me. So the narrator dismissed this and said maybe it was because I pulled an all-nighter. I'm just hearing and smelling things. I could hear Judy breathing on the far side of the room, a heavy sound, almost as if she had been running. She must have picked up a cold during the last tense week before finals. I crept along the wall until I reached my bed, groping among the covers for the stray history books. In the history textbook, in the silence, I could hear a steady drip, drip, drip sound. I sighed silently. Facilities will have to come to fix the sink in the bathroom again. So she didn't turn on the lights, thank God. She just roped in the bed and found her history textbook and took it and just, she said here, my fingers closed on the textbook. I picked it up softly and withdrew from the room as silently as I could. Remember, she did not want to wake up her friend. Relieved to be out of the room, I hurried back downstairs, collapsed into an overstuffed chair, and studied until 6 o'clock. So she studied until morning. I finally decided that enough was enough. If I slipped upstairs now, I could get a couple hours of sleep before my 9 a.m. exam. So it was early morning now. She wanted to go just get a couple of hours of sleep and go to her exam at 9 a.m. The first of the sun's rays were beaming through the windows as I slowly slid the door open, hoping not to awaken Judy. My nose was met by an earthy, metallic smell again. A second before my eyes registered the scene in my dorm room. Judy was spread-eagled on top of my bed against the far wall, her throat cut from ear to ear and her pajamas stained with blood. 2 drops of blood fell from the saturated blanket with a drip, drip noise that sounded like a leaky faucet. So that drip, drip sound she heard the night before was the dripping of her friend's blood, which felt like a leaky faucet. You know, when you leave the faucet a little open, it would make that annoying sound. Scream after scream poured from my mouth, but I couldn't stop myself any more than I could seize wringing my hands. You know, when you put your hands together like that, not knowing what to do. All along the hallway, doors slammed and footsteps came running down the passage, so she was screaming hysterically. Within moments, students had gathered in my doorway, and one of my friends gripped my arm with a shaking hand and pointed a trembling finger toward the wall. My eyes widened in shock at what I saw. Then I fainted into my friend's arms. On the wall above my bed, written in my roommate's blood, were the words, "Aren't you glad you didn't turn on the light?" Then I felt my roommate's hand shaking my shoulders, asking me to stop screaming and telling me it was all just a nightmare. I woke up and thanked God that all that horror was just a bad dream. So notice the elements of the story. Notice how the author here made the story more appealing, the feelings in the story, the emotions, the descriptions, the way she narrated what happened to her in great detail. This is how a good story needs to be written. Now, after you have read this, I would like you to fill in the following chart based on the above story. Let's do that together. Title, obviously, aren't you glad you didn't turn on the light? It's a question, so don't forget the question mark. Main characters, narrator, and her roommate, Judy. Remember, I said main characters, so the students who came in later, etc., those are not main characters. Setting, time after midnight, place, dorm room, mood and atmosphere. In stories related to horror or where there are a lot of feelings and descriptions, I might ask you for the mood or the atmosphere. Mood or atmosphere means how did it feel in the story? How was it? It was scary, it was bloody, it was gloomy. You can write several other different adjectives. So mood and atmosphere is feeling in the story. Okay, you can say, for example, if it's a story that took place on a cold, stormy night, cold and stormy, dark, a chilly. You can use the word chilly to describe the atmosphere in our story here. Problem, in one sentence, the narrator had to pull an all-nighter to study for her exam next day when a tragedy occurred in the dorm room. That basically wraps it up. This is our main idea here. Main events, I divided them into 3. You can put 4, a maximum of 4. Narrator decided to study at basement of dorm room. Forgot a book in room, felt something weird in room atmosphere. Notice phrases. Phrases. I do not want complete sentences. Studied till dawn, went up to room to see her friend killed and sprawled on the bed, screamed and screamed till everyone gathered. Ending and resolution, it was only a nightmare. Okay, so this is basically what the story elements chart is. Maybe if it were a different story, a story about friendship, etc., you would have another category here where I would say lesson learned, where you would write lesson learned. Friendship is a great asset to us as humans, and we should take care of our friends, etc. So applying what you learned, this is the prompt I'm gonna give you. You're gonna have to write a story of your own. So many of us have passed through a strange or mysterious event in our lives. A mystery. I want you to write a mystery, something scary or mysterious that either happened to you or a person you know. If nothing like that happened, please imagine. Use your imagination. Recount a story of 150 to 250 words. Guys, this is an essay. 150 to 200 words where you or someone you know went through such an incident. It's scary or a mysterious incident, something unexplained. What happened? How did the incident make you or that person feel? How did it end? Fill in the story. Fill in the following story elements chart before you write your essay. Again, you need to divide your essay into paragraphs. Ideally 4 paragraphs. Okay, an introduction where you include, of course, the setting, which is the time, place, the characters, and you write the main idea of your story in the last sentence. And then the body paragraphs, the 2 body paragraphs, if you want in a narrative, it's okay, write 3 body paragraphs. The plot, that would be the plot where you would write the events in chronological or time order. And then the conclusion, you describe your feelings, thoughts, etc. Okay, so this is it for today's lesson. Please, I am looking forward to beautiful stories. Every year my students have excellent stories to show me, so let's do our best on those. Take care and thanks for listening.